Good evening, everyone.
Hello, how are
Hi,
you?
Jade.
Good.
Camille, I love your background. So cool.
You get the prize for the coolest backgrounds.
That's awesome. That's legitimately awesome. All right, everybody, we about ready?
Yes.
Think so.
Okay. Very cool. All right, then I am going to call this meeting to order at 5:01 p.m. This is our regular October Board of Trustees meeting for the Altadena Library District. Welcome, everybody. We will start with our roll call. Trustee Andrews.
Here.
Trustee Capel.
Here.
Trustee Khan.
Here.
Trustee Wilkerson.
Here.
And I am here as well. All right, into our approval / reordering of agenda items. I actually have an item to add to the agenda, which we can do because it qualifies as an emergency authorization. So I would move that pursuant to that, we add an emergency authorization for closure as an action item under new business. Between the high winds and some work on the water mains at Mariposa, that falls under the category of things that would constitute an emergency or a crippling work shortage. So I move that we add that item as 7C, emergency authorization for the director to initiate emergency closure of the building. Do I hear a second for that?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Ooh,
Two
seconds.
and a third.
Perfect. All the seconds. Okay, perfect. Yeah, great. So motion's been made and seconded. We'll go ahead and take a roll call vote on that. Trustee Andrews.
Aye.
Trustee Capel.
Aye.
Trustee Khan.
Aye.
Trustee Wilkerson.
Aye.
And that's an aye vote for me. Thanks so much, guys. So that'll show up under new business. So then that being the case, I'd like to request a motion to go ahead and adopt the agenda in its current form or hear any motions to reorder any other items.
I move we adopt the agenda in its current form.
Okay, perfect. Motion's been made. Do I hear a second?
I second.
Our timing's impeccable, Terry.
Yeah, you guys are on top of it. Okay, I saw Camila's hand go up as well, but I got to do the audio version. So, Jason, I'll take your second. We'll have plenty of opportunities. All right. So, roll call vote on this. Trustee Andrews.
Aye.
Trustee Capel.
Aye.
Trustee Khan.
Aye.
Trustee Wilkerson.
Aye. Can you
Perfect.
hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think you were drowned out by the motion, the sea of seconds that happened. All right, and that's an aye vote for me. So the agenda is adopted as it appears in your packet with the one addition of item 7C. Okay, I don't believe, and Natalia, I hope you'll correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe we've received any requests for public comment on non-agenda items or on any other items. Is that correct?
You are correct. We have not received any.
Okay. As always, if any of those come in or if we have any comments that come in on YouTube, we will be pretty relaxed about when we take those. So always an option to submit a public comment on anything. That brings us to item 3, our consent calendar, which begins on page 3 of your board package. So as usual, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the consent calendar, a motion in a second, and then we can pull out any items for discussion that anybody would like to talk about. So do I hear a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I so move, and can I just say, I don't rush to move just so I like shove all you guys out of the way. I just do it to like save time. So, feel free to compete with me about moving in second.
I think you've earned it, Betsy.
Yeah.
You gotta get all your emotions in now,
I know.
It's a high pressure situation. All right, do I hear a second?
I second.
Okay, perfect. It's so hard on Zoom because you can't tell if somebody else is gonna talk and
Nobody has any tells. It's like a poker game.
yeah, it's a high stakes situation. All right, motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on items from the consent calendar? So The departmental reports, approval of minutes. Anything that anybody'd like to pull out to mention?
A few
Go ahead,
comments.
please. Yeah.
So I think, again, I just really want to commend the staff. I think, the Altadena libraries have been way ahead of the curve in regards to how we've not only responded to COVID-19, but doing everything we can to, reopen to the public. So seeing that we've restarted the interlibrary loans is pretty awesome on that. I did have, I think, with an election a week away, seeing the report from Bob Lucas that they're working on the family civic engagement activity packets, like that sounds awesome. I'd love to maybe in a future board meeting hear more about that and how that's going. It also seems like we've had, despite COVID, an uptick in the number of tutor learner participants. So there's 10 groups right now, which is pretty awesome. And then just in regards to the facilities report, I know we spoke about this last time, but with the movement of the passport office, do we have kind of an ETA on when those services are going to restart? So that's
Hi,
kind of
Jason, it's Nikki. The passport office is going to open on Monday, November 2nd.
awesome.
Yeah,
That is very cool.
we'll spread this week and they're ready to start. I think this week they're going to be scheduling all of the back appointments. From what I heard when we closed in March, they had to cancel over 100 appointments. And I talked to Tony within the last week or two, and they had at least 60 to 70 people already on a list that they needed to reach out to. So I think it's going to be in very high demand.
Very cool.
That's great. Terry, please.
And then I had a couple, we're just talking about the reports now, right?
That's right.
Okay. I had a couple of comments. Yeah, again, keeping with Jason's preamble there, I really think we're staying ahead of the curve. And there was one mentioned by Carlene in the technical services report that talked about programs and services now that will help job seekers. And in the LA Times in the last week or so, had a really sobering article, you probably all saw it, about the state of employment in Los Angeles is really grim. And now they're starting to lay off more city workers, and it's really getting tough out there. So I think anything that we do that can help people find a job, make it easier for people to find a job, is really important right now. I think it's part of our mission, and obviously things are happening about that. And then the other thing I thought was nice was from Diana about the Bob Lucas branch, and talking about the way that they were giving kids some, early training and early sorts of lessons on civics, basically, on the election and on voting and on all that stuff. And I think that's another thing that's just absolutely fundamental, and I'm glad to see that happening as well. And then I had one question regarding facilities. Jason covered this a little bit, but I was wondering, and I don't know if Jonathan's on or if Nikki, you can answer this. He talked about the air handler units, but it was just the filters that were replaced, right? There was no, other heavy repairs that we're doing on those air conditioning units. Is that right?
Hi, Terry, this is Jonathan. No, basically what we did was, because of the smoke and everything that was occurring at that time, we just changed the air filters. But we also did later on this month, we did our semi-annual preventive maintenance on the units, so everything's up and running and working correctly.
Okay, great. And then one last comment on the same page is that I actually took my wife Mary by on our bike ride the other day to the Bob Lucas Library to take a look at the work that's being done there. And all the people were out, the volunteers, and they were, shoveling gravel and all that stuff. And, that really felt great to see that sort of thing going on. So kudos for that as well. That's all I have.
Yep.
Thanks so much, Terry. Betsy, go ahead.
I just had a couple things. One, on page 12 in Carlene's report, it might have gone by you pretty fast, and I want to make sure you know what she's referring to when she talks about the book called March 1. March 1 is a graphic novel about the life of John Lewis, and there are three volumes of it. We promoted it really highly in our school library, and a lot of kids, I think, got up to speed about John Lewis right just in time because of those books. And it just happened that he had a couple of young staffers who said, dude, you've got to get your story out to people who don't know about you, and this is a whole audience that you can reach in this format. So if you've never seen it, or if you don't know about it, I'd highly recommend it. It's a graphic novel depiction of the whole civil rights movement, including the Pettus Bridge March. I mean, the whole thing. So I'm thrilled that you've got that many copies for people to have access to, because it's a really fantastic resource. And then the other thing, I just wanted to shout out to Sue on her retirement. I miss seeing her at the circ desk, and I honestly didn't know how long she had been with us, and that's quite a long time. So I just wanted to thank her on our behalf and say good luck.
Thanks, Betsy. Any other comments? I'll just say a couple quick things. I will definitely echo Betsy's appreciation to Sue. Thank you so much for your many years of service. And I hope that when we find ourselves on the other side of all this, it would be lovely to be able to bring everybody who's retired or, moved to other, it'd be really nice to bring everybody back for a sort of more formal recognition of appreciation. I think it's really important, and it's one of the sad things about not being able to be together in person. On the other hand, one of the sometimes difficult to find, but I think silver linings is something that I saw in several of the reports, which is just the breaking down of geographical barriers, seeing how many people were able to join the Seed Library program from all over the country, seeing some of Linda's work that curated pieces from all over the United States and all over the world. It really is exciting to me to see our reach as a public library expanding to provide services not just here in Altadena, but to people who are joining us for the sort of unique and interesting programs that we provide from around the world. So I think that's something that I'm sure will continue when this stage is over. And I think it's such a big positive when everything else sometimes seems a little bit dark. So with that, I will ask if there are any other comments, questions, discussion on anything in the consent calendar. Okay, if not, we'll go ahead and proceed to a vote to approve the consent calendar. The motion having been made and seconded, we'll go ahead and proceed with a roll call vote. Trustee Andrews.
Aye.
Trustee Capel.
Aye.
Trustee Khan.
Aye.
Trustee Wilkerson. And an aye vote from me as well. Okay, perfect. So that brings us to our monthly special presentation, which this month, as you guys see on your agenda, is on the mobile library unit. Take it away.
Hello, let me get my video going here. All right, I'm going to share my screen real quick. Sorry, hold on. All right, can everyone see the presentation? Christopher's here with me too, hence why we're masked. So today, our presentation will be about the Bookmobile that I'm sure you've heard about through some of the Taste of Dina festivities, as well as some exciting technology updates from Christopher. So I am Chloe, for those of you who may not know. I'm the Marketing and Community Engagement Manager, and Christopher here is our IT Manager. So the Bookmobile sort of was born of an assessment of some of the needs in our community, and I think that through COVID, some of these have become even more important. And the Bookmobile will help sort of meet some of these. So as a library, access is always our #1 priority. And I think internet and technology will be a key piece to that. Through a lot of even the census, we were learning about more of the statistics around Altadena. I don't know them off the top of my head, I apologize, but about just, I think it's 14%, I want to say, of Altadena that does not have internet access. I think we've seen even throughout how quickly our Library of Things laptops have gone out, how there is a need for technology access. So this will help with that. There's an ongoing issue in Altadena that a lot of the public transportation tends to go north to south along the main arteries across Altadena. And it's been reported even in our community conversations back in 2017 that it's hard for some people to get from West Altadena, East Altadena, and so back and forth. So this will help sort of bridge that gap by bringing services directly to people who may not be able to get to either of our library locations. Always access to different resources that we can provide. This will help bring it directly to people's homes. Rampant isolation, this was maybe a strong term, but I think during COVID-19, we've all seen how isolating this experience has been and how easy it has been to just sort of keep our community real small for safety, but also just from this all the safer at home orders and all of the distancing that has caused. Emotional distancing, even you could call it. So it will help provide connection by bringing us into people's neighborhoods. Innovation, I mean, one of our key values is innovation. And I think this will open the door for a lot of more neighbor-driven engagement, meaning helping us facilitate programs in people's neighborhoods, in their front yards, in their backyards, doing more things out in the community beyond just our library walls. And of course, the communication limitations, this could potentially help spread information to places that don't have, again, internet access or access to a lot of the news that is available to others. And we're going to find out more needs, I'm sure. A lot of this process is going to involve more talking to the community, and we want our services provided by this Bookmobile to be driven by the needs that come up through those conversations. So a quick timeline, I'm not going to go too in depth into all of this, but over the past almost the past year now, we've been in a research phase. So doing a lot of research independently, attending webinars. Our little team working on this so far is me, Christopher, and Jonathan, because they will also be helping facilitate the actual implementation of the vehicle and doing a lot of those modifications. So we've been attending webinars. We were recently in a webinar/networking session for people with mobile libraries in all different phases of development across the country. Or was it just California? It was all over. All over. It was a lot of them, which was very helpful to sort of learn from people who both had smaller vehicles and some of even as small as little bikes or trailers that could be pulled around on a bike, all the way up to people who had huge school buses basically transformed into mobile libraries. We are currently what I would call the planning, design, and funding phase. So we're in the process of collecting a lot of visioning from different departments, figuring out how to best incorporate all the pieces we want into the Bookmobile. We're in the process of updating sort of our vision around what the actual physical functioning of the vehicle will be internally, how to price that out in a way that makes sense, and then also seeking funding. I'll talk in a second just about, we had a couple grants that we were rejected from, so we're sort of reworking some of our planning around that right now. In the winter time, we hope to get the van and start doing a lot of the modifications in-house. I think one of the biggest things I learned from the recent networking session that we did is that people who are hiring consultants and hiring all these outside vendors to do a lot of this, some of their timelines were even like 4 years to be able to just do the updates, and it was just felt a little crazy to me. And if we have the ability to do it in-house, why not? Let's try it out in-house. We have very talented facilities team who can and mastermind sort of the logistics of it. Part of that process will also then be doing some community conversations. Again, we're just trying to figure out how to do this in a way that we can't be in people's homes right now, but figuring out a way to do some outreach and just setting up some future community conversations too, so we can always continue to evaluate how we're doing and add services as needed. And then, of course, service planning, the actual logistics of internal training for staff of how this is all going to function, now that we have Victor on board, I'm really excited to dig into that process with him and figuring out how to best get our team trained in how this will all hopefully function sooner rather than later, pending COVID. The goal for launch is in the spring so that we'll have some time. This is based roughly on some talks PUSD is having right now about when I think they're hoping to reopen doors to students. Hopefully this would be able to get our summer reading promotion out there as a fun launch in the spring. Again, a lot of this depends on how safe people are being and how fast COVID is spreading. We're hoping for that data to continue to go down. And then of course, just ongoing evaluation and maintenance, always just trying to keep it in the best shape and always trying to adjust it based on what we're learning throughout the process. So funding, like I said, we were recently rejected from 2 pretty large grants. And so we had been sort of in a dreaming mode of dreaming about what the budget could look like with these huge sums of money, which we did not get, which is fine. We're reworking it. But that being said, we are now sort of reworking our budget to figure out how to do it more in-house and with a smaller funding source. And we're also seeking for the grant funding that could potentially help fill at least some of the different pieces, as well as corporate sponsorships that we'll be working with the foundation to get. Now, I'm sure Bridget, I want to let Bridget do most of the bragging shortly, but we're going to net probably $19,500 at least from Taste of Dina this year, which is amazing. We've had a couple of recent donations that sort of pushed us over into the 20,000. So that's huge. So that automatically is a huge chunk for us to sort of work on getting the initial vehicle. We recently canceled our OCLC membership, so $20,000 a year from that can be rerouted potentially into maintenance and costs related to the vehicle each year. And then we have a couple upcoming potential grants that we're working on, specifically around some of our services with the vehicle. So Jack and Jill of America is an organization that has a couple different grant opportunities for potentially special collections in the mobile unit, as well as some programming funding that could help us do more in-person events once we launch. And then Christopher just applied to up to $10,000 or $10,000 total.
It's up to 10,000.
Up to $10,000 for a mobile beacon grant that would fund technology in the unit, as well as 10 additional hotspots and 10 laptops that would go in the unit to be able to check out around town, which is huge. So we will hear back about that January. So we're playing with initial layouts and trying to figure out how to best, this is just a rough mock-up based on sort of what we've talked about, but a lot of the different things we want to incorporate into the vehicle will be having it be a roaming Wi-Fi hotspot. So again, sort of, we're trying to narrow down where some of those areas in our community are that Wi-Fi is a need, that we could have this van be parked on a schedule and be a hotspot for people who need internet access, as well as access to laptops during those times. This will help us get our library of things out and about. So laptops, hotspots, and all the fun that we're gonna talk about really briefly in a minute. School visits, this will open the door for us to be able to bring the library to students in a new way and bring activities, not just books, but activities and all kinds of materials for them. I will share just a recent anecdote is that I know PUSD has been having some issues internally with some of their Chromebooks and laptops not being compatible with the school platform that they're using. And so again, hopefully COVID will not be a thing forever, but that this could help us bring laptops to maybe the students or communities that may need those types of things in the future. Community pop-ups at different events, visiting people who are homebound or visiting seniors in senior living facilities that we can help bring more to them. Reaching non-library users, again, just when we have a design ready for the van and have it looking real flashy, I want a fun little horn that's gonna go off as we go through town. This will be a great way to sort of just bring awareness to the library and a great way to introduce us to maybe people who are not aware of us. Victor and I are working on some great stuff to engage local businesses, and this van could absolutely open doors there. Of course, learning opportunities and events. This we hope to incorporate in our van somewhere as well, ways to survey the community while we are out and about in the community. So getting data that we may not always have from populations that we're not always reaching, this may open that door for that. Our deposit libraries around town, potentially this could be something that our librarians could use to go fill up those deposit libraries and make those refills easier and more accessible. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, some of those neighbor-hosted engagements where we would have empower the community, sort of invite the library into their neighborhood, that we could bring materials and help sort of foster community connections out in the neighborhood. So yeah, that's all I got for now, but Christopher has a big technology update extraordinaire. So take it away.
Okay. So we applied for a CSL grant. We were made aware by Khalifa when we decided to upgrade our backbone from 1 gig to 10 gig. I reached out to Khalifa and asked about what grants are available to offset the costs of the capital expenditures for that upgrade. As it turned out, there was a CSL grant that we could apply for. And in that process of applying for it, we won it. We got that CSL grant. And it's for $345,000 is what we were awarded to upgrade all of our infrastructure and basically our entire IT system. It's the whole ball of wax. Let's see here. Oh.
I emphasized it.
Yeah. So what is being upgraded? So as you can see in that first picture with the hand and the wires, what I was indicating to CSL was that over time, our network has been essentially put together piecemeal over generations. And you can see these different color wires are also often representative of different grades of wiring. And so all the wiring will be redone and all the interconnected network appliances will be connected over fiber now, which, you can get the same performance out of fiber or Cat7 these days, but it'll be fiber. And then you can see some hardware on the right here. We're going to be getting a couple servers. We'll be getting new switches, new access points, power backup system for our control room, and that wiring in the bottom right-hand corner is Cat6A SFTP shielded fully twisted pairs. So that has like a good resistance to any kind of signal noise that could be in the area, making our a real fluid connection. All right. So what are the important highlights from this that we're coming away with? We're going to have uniform hardware now, so it won't be that piecemeal hodgepodge. We'll all be Cat6A SFTP. And we're going to get a couple servers, one that's going to be active and the other passive. So again, redundancy there. Same thing is going to happen with our firewall and our switching systems. We're going to be upgrading the power of the Ethernet switches so that they have a deeper capacity and dropping new lines in for internal cameras and have secondary lines for these access points. And the cool thing too is that the bleeding edge switches and firewall that we're going to be having in place, it fully integrates in the management portal our Cisco OpenDNS service, which is part of our SEPA compliance that allows us to have E-rate and the Category 1 broadband subsidies. Speaking of E-rate, Category 2 money that has been used historically to pay for upgrades is now being put on the sidelines to upgrade our equipment, bleeding edge equipment in step as new versions come out, so we can stay on the bleeding edge. Yeah, and that's what's cool there. Okay, so what does this really mean in terms of our network capacity and capability? I believe it'll put us future-proofed for about 20 to 30 years. And we were like the best around in terms of Wi-Fi access. And now I'd say we're the undisputed champions of internet access, maybe in all of California, I don't know, or the world, who knows? It's bad. Like we had, basically to put it in perspective, we were using about a little over half at our max capacity of the 1 gig. And so that's like with our internet connection driving in a thumbtack with the sledgehammer. And now what we're going to have is tantamount to exploding a nuke on the backside of the moon to push it out of orbit into the Earth to drive that tack into the surface. So this is really cool, and we have to do this right now. I think it's a good time for this to land because, you know, there's uncertainty in future funding, and we're going to be set. So that's it for that grant. And
Let's share this.
yeah, Chloe threw this library of things update in here, and we just had library of things up for a couple months now, and it's working out great. We've added some new stuff, as you can see on here. You have anything to say about it?
I just included this because this is also the type of stuff that we could take with us in the mobile unit out into the community. When we added the telescope to the library things, wasn't it checked out like the first day?
Yeah.
People checked out the telescope. We now have virtual reality headset kits that can be checked out. And coming soon, we're going to be adding things like sewing machines. We've got a paranormal investigation kit that people can check out, which YouTube video dropping this week. It's going to be great. Toolkits and more. So again, all of this is stuff that can go into that mobile unit and also be checked out around town and facilitate programs potentially out in the community. So that's all we got. Thank you all.
Really, Chloe? That's all you got?
Lots going on as always.
Fantastic. I'd love to open up the floor for questions. I know I have a ton, but questions, comments from the rest of the board.
Can we back up to the paranormal investigation? What the heck? What does that mean?
So we have items like spirit boxes, with that you can like that scan radio waves and stuff. We've got Ouija board. Our teen librarian has been covering sort of in a spooky theme for October, every week a different one of these items and how they sort of work. And I mean, we do have a very haunted history in Altadena. And so I think some of it is just to open that door for people who want to explore all kinds of new ideas.
That is so cool.
Shout out to Isabel for that.
Yeah, that's just great work, everybody. It's just, that's a very impressive presentation with a lot of great stuff going on. So that is going to get people really excited about the library, I think.
Thank you. Katie, you said you had some questions.
I do have some questions. So first of all, I mean, I have to stay in front of my camera, but standing ovation. This is amazing. I know lots of time and energy and planning has gone into all of these pieces, but it's so exciting to see them start to come together. I'm thrilled about the potential, both in terms of our mobile unit and in terms of some of our technological capabilities that we're going to be upgrading. I mean, one thing that this brings to mind for me, and this is, I guess, kind of a question, but also I just want to get a sense of sort of where you guys are thinking about it. You know, certainly the pandemic has showed us that the digital divide and access to technology, and especially access to the internet, is a huge issue. And that's something that, as we all know, is exacerbated here in Altadena by our geography, right? Like lots of folks have really questionable reception. We're in this weird sort of mountainous thing where maybe your phone only works in one particular place. So I guess my question, which is very broad, is what are we thinking about in terms of ways of kind of turning access to technology, access to internet connection into like a public utility, a public good, something that's accessible to people that we can help be the pipeline for?
Well, I know Christopher has a lot of thoughts about this.
Yeah.
I will just say before you go into your
Yeah.
manifesto that we have, that we do have within the mobile unit, the goal is to have it be like a Wi-Fi booster out of it. So like,
right,
it's a small step towards that. I would say that like having scheduled time in those communities that we could bring Wi-Fi to people that they may have access to is one small step that the unit could do for that. I know Christopher though has bigger dreams for Wi-Fi in Altadena.
Yeah. One of the projects got listed on my report, Project IO, which is basically all in one, is kind of like that idea that it's a public utility. I've been researching it, and I've sent a couple of emails out to the company Crown Castle, who basically installs and determines where to place 5G nodes, which actually all connect through a fiber backbone. And the idea is that with Newsom's recent announcement that he wants this broadband access to be ubiquitous and to erase this digital divide, that possibly I could get CSL and Crown Castle and us to be the ones that trailblaze on this and get 5G nodes everywhere, that we create a stepwise type of free and reduced school lunch type of program in place for internet access, where these home routers would tie into that 5G network that would be distributed all around Altadena, and depending on you'd pay according to your income, but ideally less than what people typically pay right now, and have much faster access. So that's the idea, and that Altadena would manage and broker that, Altadena Library, in order to make that happen. It's pie in the sky, quite pie in the sky, and it would be a lot of money involved. But I think that there probably will be a lot of money on the table to get such a project going, if we can talk to the right people. And I think with some of the connections that Nikki has, and I think it might be possible. We'll see.
And
Yeah, I mean,
oh, go ahead. Sorry, Katie.
no, go ahead.
With the mobile unit, we could potentially make that one of our early goals, is to even just get more data around that in certain parts of the community. Like, I think there's just a lot that we don't know yet about the details of what that looks like and what the limitations are around internet and technology. So I think that absolutely could be something just to be an assessment and evaluation project early on, is just to get out in those spots and learn more. So
yeah, that's all really exciting. I am so happy to hear that that's on the table, because I have been following the sort of developments in municipal broadband across the country, and those have been very hit and miss. And I have to believe that we have the capacity here to, as a special district, and with sort of unique blend of expertise that we have, to think about some really interesting and innovative solutions. And I'd love to see us come up with some cool ways of delivering connection to people, because man, I was worried my internet was going to go down today, and I was going to drive to the library parking lot and sit in my car. And I think that there are so many people in town who would really benefit from having that access just be an always on pipeline.
Cool. Any other questions, thoughts? No.
I'll just add that, when I saw Bridget talking about this leading up to the Taste of Dina, like the back of my head is like, like it's cool to have goals, and it's going to take us a couple years to raise $100,000. Like that's like going on in my head. And so to see that like we have this goal and we're on track to be launching this like the next spring is just so awesome. And 10 million things running through my head already about like all the cool things that we can do with this. I'm sure you guys are even light years ahead of me. So I just think it's amazing. And it's just another one of those things that I think about, in my head about where we started as a board just 2 years ago, and where we're at now on not just things like this, but just everything that we've got going on. It's an amazing turnaround in my view. So kudos to everybody who's been working on this.
Thank you.
Betsy, go ahead.
It's just occurring to me to share one little nugget from the historical research that I've been doing around the building of our original building of the main library. And that is, when that happened, East Altadena was pissed because they thought along the way there was going to be a branch built on the east side. And there was actually a contingent of people who tried to secede from the district because they were so angry about that. And I mean, I think we rightly often focus our concern on West Altadena, that to make sure that our services are robust. And, you know, I know people who live in East Altadena, they just go down to Hastings Ranch. So, you know, do they even need us? Well, I don't know, but Altadena is one entity. And I love the idea of an east-west connecting entity within our, you know, our service that will help draw that part of town into feeling like we're their library. Because I think a lot of them just don't. And, you know, I mean, obviously the creativity that you guys bring to this is endless. And I cannot wait to see, you know, the stuff you come up with about how you're going to do this neighborhood engagement and events. And, you know, I mean, I can't even imagine, because you guys are light years ahead of me in imagination. But just, I think that little piece of our history will now, what, 50 years later, maybe get a little bit righted. And I'm glad about that.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Because I agree. I think I mean, that of course, West Altadena always comes up in our priorities of wanting to broaden our reach there. But I think you're right that this is something that I see as being all over the community and all over in different ways. And so I think it will absolutely open that door, including with schools on like more of the further east side, like Daniel Webster, I want to say elementary, that is in our district, that I think in the midst of a lot of the more local schools probably often gets maybe overlooked. So I think, yeah, figuring out ways to reach all sides is our goal in this tool. That could be really awesome. So thank you for that.
Awesome. All right, guys, thank you so much, and keep it up. We're excited to hear the next installation. This is really exciting stuff. Very cool.
Thank you.
All right, very good. So now that brings us to reports from our support groups. I know we have Bridget here on behalf of the foundation. Bridget, you want to tell us what's going on? Oh, you're muted. Hang on.
There we are.
We go.
I got it.
Perfect. You got
Sorry,
it.
I always forget that. I'm thrilled to report that our Altadena neighbors just keep on giving to help purchase this mobile unit. Our income at the close of the event, as you know, I reported at last month's meeting, was about $14,000. And then we decided, well, let's send out and let people know we still need to raise money. And since then, we have gotten up to almost $22,000. People just sending money, buying wine. I mean, come on, we must be real drinkers here in Altadena. And we did raise the price up to $30. You know, you didn't get it during the event. So, and every bottle is valued at $30 or more. So the money keeps rolling in. And as I was thinking about this report, the Margaret Mead quote came to my mind of never doubt what a small group of thoughtful individuals can do together, because indeed that's the only way it gets done. And I think it's so good to remember that it doesn't have to be hundreds of people with a vision. It just, if everybody says, I'm going to do what I can, how I can, when I can, we get things done. And I just am so excited about it. And listening to Christopher and Chloe, I just wanted to burst. I was so excited about this. Then the other thing we've been working on, of course, as always, is Measure Z. So our foundation has decided to give another $5,000. So I think that gets us up to our $100,000 goal for the Measure Z campaign. And I honestly think, based upon the response to Taste of Dena and helping, I just don't have any doubt that our neighbors are going to vote wholeheartedly to support Measure Z. And I really applaud you, trustees, for your vision and moving forward with it, not knowing what the future was going to bring, but knowing this is our shot at getting something very, very important done for our community. So I thank you all. And that's it, folks.
Thanks, Bridget. That's great news about the ongoing. Why don't you give a plug? Why don't you tell people how they can continue to give, where they can buy wine? Let the folks know. And by the folks, I mean me.
Just go to the, Altadena Library website and click on the thing over here that says support us. Go down to Altadena Library Foundation and it'll be Taste of Dena.
There we go.
Easy
Perfect.
peasy.
You heard it here.
I'll even bring you the wine if I need to. So whatever it takes.
Fantastic. All right.
Thanks.
Very, very good news. Thank you so much.
Uh-huh.
All right, Nikki, I know that you have one or two things. I don't think we have anybody here from the Friends, but do you want to say a couple words?
Thank you. Yeah, so our conversations with the Friends right now are going to stem around when we could potentially have volunteers come back. We definitely have a lot of phone calls coming in about when we can take donations. I think everybody cleaned their house while they were stuck at home, so there's probably endless amounts of books that we could be bringing in. But when we coordinate that, I almost think we're going to have a book sale like the next weekend or something, or we're not going to be able to handle the supply. So that's going to be my goal in terms of figuring out when the Friends want to bring volunteers back into the library and when we're going to potentially allow people to do that. And then of course, when we can hopefully start doing book sales, because I have a feeling they're going to be pretty profitable the next few ones that we do. Terry, do you have anything to add as a liaison?
No, I talked about the meeting that we had last meeting that we had, and there really is, to my knowledge, hasn't been a lot of movement, with formal meetings and stuff on there. And so as soon as there's more to speak about, I'll let you know. That is interesting news about the books and about everybody cleaning out the books. With just a little comment, we've got one of the little libraries going. And we had sent a group email out to our street, which is really active with stuff. So yeah, we use a couple more kids' books, and we are still getting boxes of books on our staff. And there's way more than the capacity of the little library we have. So I think people were looking at the opportunity to get rid of some of their books in our neighborhood as well.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much. Then Nikki, I will hand it over to you for your report.
Perfect. Good evening, board members. So good to see all of you again. To mimic earlier comments, I would like to formally say farewell to Sue Colasurda. Did Katie drop off? Oh no, there she is, sorry. After her almost 2 decades of work for the Altadena Library District. As I mentioned in my report, her popular computer classes, beautiful displays, and consistent work are so appreciated, and we're definitely gonna miss her. I did visit her, bring her some flowers, and say farewell on behalf of the board and the staff, and thank her for the work that she did. And I got to meet her cat, whose name is Katie, actually. So it was nice to see her. We would also like to welcome Margaret Hatanaka, who is our new adult services librarian. She joined us on October the 12th and comes to us with over 20 years of experience as a professional librarian. So we feel very lucky to have her as a member of our team. Thankfully, she started on our second professional development day of the year on October 12th, which I think I mentioned last month that we had the staff read the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace. As soon as Margaret accepted the position, she bought the book and read it also and took the assessment. So she showed up ready to discuss her appreciation language as well. We spent the morning doing activities with the staff around our languages of appreciation, so we all know how we best like to be appreciated, followed by a really yummy lunch. In the afternoon, we presented our internal values statement that the staff kind of requested out of our last professional development day, made it in the form of a bookmark so everyone could take it with them. And then followed that with some role playing around crucial conversations. So Chloe and Helen Kate created a form that's like a guide for people that, even if it's a really minor thing, they want to have a difficult conversation, it kind of helps set them up with another staff person or whoever to, sometimes these difficult conversations, you need a little bit of a guide. So we've created a bunch of hypothetical difficult situations and had staff role play. So I thought it was really good. The feedback was really good from the staff in terms of like how to approach these kinds of conversations so that we can all be working in a productive and healthy manner. And then we ended the day, our staff recognition team requested that we have some time to just play, basically. So we had board games out, we were showing Halloween movies, Ling and I put a whole puzzle together. So we had like a couple hours to just like team build and bond and get to know each other better. So I do want to thank the board for your continued support of all of our staff's professional development. I know they're very grateful for the time that they've been given to get to know each other, as well as like work on the development that they bring up to us. All right, so we are so sad to see Trustee Khan leave us, but I do know that I have to face it and the day is coming. So we did explore, based on Katie's suggestion last month, having a new trustee appointed by the November 23rd deadline in last month's package. Natalia reached out to LA County and they confirmed that it would be the best process to have all 3 of the open seats appointed by the Board of Supervisors before the terms expire on December 4th. So we've opened the application process on our website. So spread the word if you know anyone that would be interested in serving on the board. Please, get the word out. Those interested in applying for Trustee Khan's open seat can visit our website at altadena-library.org/November board vacancy. The deadline to apply is November 13th, and there will be a special board meeting to appoint the new trustee on Thursday, November 19th at 5 p.m. Just so all of you know, we're kind of waiting to get through the election next week before we really push, because I don't want to confuse people in terms of like the vacancy versus the election and stuff. So after next Tuesday, we'll push hard and then they'll have another week and a half to apply. We definitely want to get out the vote. So as I mentioned in my report, there are several drop-off boxes throughout Altadena, as well as other voting resources on our civic engagement LibGuide on our website. So spread the word. It's altadena-library.org/libguides, and that's LIB guides. So lots of information about voting. All right, so in terms of statistics, we're no longer, as you could see, the statistics definitely went up this month, and that is due to that we're no longer extending due dates on materials. So we've seen a large number of materials being returned as a result. I think mainly it's people are getting the email that says like, hey, you have stuff that's overdue or it's coming due. And so we've had a ton of stuff coming back. In addition to that, patrons are getting automatic renewals now that their things are becoming expired. So that's where you kind of have seen those numbers go up. We're still at least a third, no, 2/3 less in statistics than the same month last year. So unfortunately, it doesn't make sense to show comparisons yet. But I did want to ask if the board would like to see any other statistics in the board package. If so, just say the word. I know I just dropped that on you right now, but we're happy to provide whatever other statistics you might be curious about.
I don't think we need specific statistics, but if it'd be good to just hear a little bit about how the partial reopening has been going. I know just some outside feedback in the community, folks are generally becoming aware of it and definitely excited that the doors are open.
That is the next thing on my report. So thank you for pointing it out, Jason. So I was going to say yay. I'm extremely excited to announce that I did mention to the board last month that we were planning on opening, and we definitely did include, we expanded our services to include in-person visits at both branches starting on Monday, October 5th. One of the days I saw Camila when I was greeting at the door. So it was good to see her. So generally what we found was the main door count for the first week on average was about 35 to 40 people. The second week was around 50 people per day, by the way. That's from 12 to 5 when we're open. And the third week, which was last week, we just finished our third week of it, we're averaging about 70 people a day. So we're definitely seeing an uptick in people coming in. As far as Bob Lucas goes, they're averaging 7 to 8 people a day, including literacy. What they've done is had some literacy hours in the morning, as well as being open from 3 to 5, Monday through Friday. So we're continuing to talk through the open schedule / curbside hours to make sure we're meeting everyone's needs in the best way that we can. curbside appointments have really dropped off, which was something that I heard from some of the other libraries throughout the state that they found would happen is when they opened, curbside really dropped off. So we're playing with how to do that carrying forward, whether it's just having a curbside spot when we're open that people can call and will fulfill their curbside order at that point. Because again, we're trying to be as strategic as we can with the staff's time. We don't want to put someone on curbside that has nothing to do, basically. So we're going to continue to play with that. We're also looking at putting some tables outside, possibly over by the bridge, by the one sliding door that's not open, where we'll have tables and chairs and power available for students that maybe need space to do homework or other things and want the Wi-Fi access. So that was a conversation I actually had earlier today. As far as I know, and I can't swear on this, but we are the only library in LA County that's open right now. So even though we didn't mean to be first, I guess we're kind of leading the way with this. Other directors that I've been on the email list with the Southern California Library Cooperative. I shared our guidelines for opening as well as our safety protocols. I have Whittier Library Director and her team coming here on Wednesday to check out what we're doing, see how it's going and all of that. So right now I'm just trying to, like, as well as tweak it, share as much information as I can with others about how it's going. But overall, I would have to say thumbs up. It's been really smooth. We haven't had any major issues. I think the staff feel like they're adequately protected with face shields and gloves, and we have plexiglass. And overall, I think this limited capacity opening has really worked. So I also wanted to mention the Jackson Elementary renaming. So the Altadena Library District has been a pivotal partner to the Jackson PTA in the process of renaming the Andrew Jackson Elementary School. I don't know if any of you, I do know some of you participated, but we helped host and facilitate a community forum on Sunday, October 11th, during which time community members shared very strong support in terms of the renaming. A survey was also distributed digitally to the community and also available in print that was dropped off at the library locations. We're going to continue to be involved in this process, and we'll continue to expand as students are engaged in learning about the different options for alternate names, which is an excellent opportunity for them to learn about the library's online research tools and books about some of the figures they may research. We're thrilled that Jackson PTA has expressed this interest in the library being a key partner. So again, another great partnership that's kind of grown of late. And just to plug some programming, I did want to promote our virtual program taking place with mortician, activist, and funeral industry rabble-rouser, Caitlin Dowdy, who will be interviewed by our own teen librarian, Isabel Briggs, on this coming Wednesday afternoon, October 28th at 4 p.m. Attendees must register, so please visit the events page on our website to do so. When I posted it or shared it on my Facebook page, my daughter, who's 19, texted me and was like, how did you guys get her? I love her. I watch her videos all the time. So it's like, obviously, Isabel has her finger on the pulse of these things. She's also, as Chloe mentioned, been doing some ghost hunting activities and videos throughout the month on our Altadena Teens Instagram page that I would highly encourage you to check out. I've loved watching them. Isabel is really funny. So I've been sharing those on my Facebook page too, because they're really great videos. There's also many other great videos on our YouTube page that continue to be produced by staff, including the one that Chloe mentioned earlier with her and Isabel doing a paranormal hunting video looking for our own library ghost, which will be available this coming Wednesday also. So I think that's all I have for tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions any of you may have.
Go ahead, Terry.
Going way back to the beginning, Nikki, you talked about the 3 open seats needing appointments and so on, but really the 2 that were filled already, we don't need to do anything more, right? That's all done in terms of paperwork and everything? Okay, gotcha.
Yep, you guys are set. And a huge thank you to Natalia. She's been staying on top of all of this LA County. It's not always the easiest thing to figure these things out, for sure.
I have 2 questions, if I may.
Please.
Back to the ever rising numbers of people that are coming to the limited opening. I'm just wondering if that has reached a point yet where people are needing to wait to come in because of needing to meter people and how many you can have in the room at the same time. We haven't reached that point.
No, I mean, since we're open for 5 hours, it tends to just flow.
Kind of evens out.
A lot of the people coming in, I would say, I haven't worked a greeting shift in over a week because I was off last week, but a lot of them just want to grab holds and go. So it's pretty quick.
They're not hanging out.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I feel like most of the browsing patrons are parents with kids, which is really nice to see the kids coming back in.
Yeah.
The only waiting that I've personally encountered is for people that want to use computers, and maybe all 3 are full.
Mhm.
So again, I think with us providing the ability to check out the laptops and then sit at a table outside could help alleviate some of.
Yeah. By the way, I was picturing that area that you were mentioning about possibly putting tables that has overhang, right? Okay, so there'd be shade and shelter.
Yep.
My other question is, I'm just so interested. I'm so sorry I missed the Jackson Elementary meeting, and I'm curious what involvement in any, if any, the school district has in this process, or what, it just seems amazing to me that the Jackson PTA seems to be able to just decide that's what's going to happen, but doesn't some administrator need to sign off on it, or, approve of it, or?
Katie, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. Yeah, I have been in some of the planning meetings and was at the town hall and then a subsequent meeting at the PTA as well. Basically what the procedure is, as far as I understand it, and Chloe, I know you've been up to your eyeballs in this as well, so if I'm wrong, please correct me, is the PTA can come up with whatever they want and then they submit it to the PUSD board as the next stage in the formal process. So their goal is basically to, in this first town hall, was to just assess interest in renaming, period. Not to say like, it's going to be this, it's going to be that, but just, is this something we want to move forward with? And I think, the overwhelming consensus was absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the next stage of the game is to start to solicit some feedback to figure out how to actively involve students in that process and get their input. And I know that the PTA has a very active committee who's undertaking that process. So it will, I'm sure, unfold in the months to come. And then when they reach that consensus, at that point, then they would forward that recommendation to PUSD for sort of the approval / ratification, I guess.
Do you happen to know if I'm thrilled that the students are involved with research and proposing names. I'm just wondering if they're considering, or if they have access to information about local, illustrious Altadena residents, or historical residents of Altadena that might, be suitable to name a school after. And if they, if there's, local history information is sometimes hard to find, as I've just been learning. So I'm wondering if, I don't know. That may not be knowable right now, but I love the idea of kids finding out about their own local history as part of this process.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to say that our good friends at the Historical Society have also been involved in the planning process, and they are on top of it. So I feel very confident that they have all the resources they need, and that if there's something more they want to find out, I believe our folks over at Historical can find pretty much anything.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's a really cool, I think, example of one of these partnerships that's been growing over time. And I'm really excited that we're able to assist and facilitate that process and kind of connect pieces.
I was gonna say, I don't know how accurate the information is on the change.org petition, but I found it interesting as a start to just read about the fact. It looks like, according to whoever wrote the petition, that PUSD is not in opposition to it, and has informally, according to what it says, informally calls it, has removed Andrew from the title and just calls it, I think, Jackson Dual Language Immersion Program or Elementary. So that was interesting. And then it also speaks to, if I'm reading it right, the Mary Jackson, who is the first Black woman to work at JPL. And this particular petition, it looks like it, I mean, it says strongly, like, we demand that you name it, this. So I found that to be interesting. Also, to your point, Betsy, in terms of looking at, I don't know if she's an Altadena, historical figure, but that, she does have some, presence in Altadena in terms of, working at JPL. So I think that was interesting.
Yeah, so the change, and again, this is my understanding, and I am happy to be corrected, but my understanding is that the change.org petition was circulated, I think, over the summer by a community member. And so the PTA effort is trying to bring everybody alongside the people who circulated that petition, parents, community stakeholders. They're working with town council as well. And I know that the initial thought was the sort of dual benefit for Mary Jackson is that, of course, her role as an important Black female scientist and her role at JPL is great, but also, like, it would be perhaps an attractive cost saving thing for PUSD because you wouldn't have to necessarily change the last name. But again, I think that there's a lot of room between here and there. And I heard a lot of great suggestions for potential names. And so I think I would really encourage everybody to, like, kind of continue to watch the process unfold. I'm sure there will be future town halls and future community meetings. Veronica Jones, the leadership at Historical, Matt Ema, who's the president of the Jackson PTA, all have been super welcoming for anybody from the library side. So I would just say, like, keep watching, because I think it's going to be really interesting. Any other questions for Nikki? Okay. Oh, go ahead, Camila. Sorry.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say that we did bump into each other at the library, and I've been there at least, I would say 3 or 4 times to grab a hold, just go through. I did take my son through once, but it was a little bit stressful because he's super, super energetic and wanted to look at and touch all the books. And I'm just like, don't touch anything. But it was really great to be able to be there and just be greeted so warmly by everyone and be able to, be in the library and pick up books again. So I'm glad that we're the first, and it's really awesome that you all were able to do that and continue to pull it off so safely. So thank you.
Hear, hear. All right, very good. And I think at this point, thank you, Nikki. We can move on to item 5C, which are financial reports. Nicole, take it away.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So these are the financial statements for August 2020. Currently, we're at 16.66% of our budget year, and year-to-date expenditures exceed year-to-date revenues, which they will until about December. We are still satisfying the district policy of having over 6 months operating expenses in reserves. As far as revenue, we did collect a significant amount in unsecured property taxes in August. Those are issued January 1st, but they become delinquent on August 31st. So many people pay in August right before that August 31st date. And then for expenditures, we did pay our earthquake insurance premium in August. And we also, it was a nice surprise, I wasn't expecting it. We did get reimbursements related to COVID-19 from both our dental and vision insurers. So that was really nice. We did pay a premium to SDRMA for last fiscal year's workers' comp after they did their annual payroll reconciliation. That happens just due to fluctuations with staffing, the amount of payroll that we actually spent. We usually do get that invoice and we end up paying it in the next fiscal year. And then some extra to NBS for work related to the CFD formation. $5,700 was paid to a firm that we work with called McLeod Watts for an actuarial valuation of our OPEB benefits. We do that every 2 years. That's required by CalPERS. And then we did make a final payment to Clifford Moss for the CFD formation feasibility study. Any questions about the financial report?
I just have a tiny, slightly embarrassing question, just to check my layperson's understanding, Nicole. At some time, and that's back to the property taxes. Somebody explained to me at some point that the way to distinguish secured from unsecured is that unsecured stuff actually is not secured to the ground. Like, it's not your house, but like your car or your boat, or I mean that unsecured is really kind of a literal term. Is that true?
Yes, no, that's absolutely correct. So secured property taxes are anything bolted down to a foundation, really, and then unsecured is, you're absolutely right, like a boat or an RV, something like that.
Okay, I just wanted to double check. Thanks.
Quick question for me, Nicole. So can you just remind me where we are in our audit process?
Yes, so they're finalizing it, and they're going to have it ready to present at next month's meeting. They just missed this month. I guess they just have a lot of clients, and they're, you know, a little backed up as everybody is with COVID. There are difficulties, you know, with not having staff in the office, things like that. But they do say that they'll have it ready for next month.
Okay, very good.
Sorry, I had one more thing.
Please, yeah.
And it's just for the record and doesn't matter at all. But I did notice as I was going through these reports that there's some duplicate pages. So so page 33 through 35 are actually duplicates of pages 25 through 27.
Yeah,
So,
you're absolutely right on that. My profit and loss statement for the month of August is missing, and unfortunately, that profit and loss year to year got duplicated. And I had been working from the reports I submitted. I didn't even realize it until I sat down and looked at the full package right before the meeting just now. But we'll go ahead and post the missing reports to the website as soon as we can. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize that meant something was missing, but I'm glad to know it will be fixed. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments for Nicole? Okay, very good. Thank you, Nicole. Appreciate it. So that brings us to our committee reports. Do we have a report from the Budget Committee?
No, nothing to report until, you know, I guess, Nicole, I would trust you to let me know, and you too, Nikki, when a good day would be to take a look, to convene the Budget Committee to talk about how we're doing and so on. So I'll turn that over to you, but there's really been no activity in the last month on that.
Okay, very good. That brings us to our CVRA committee, and Betsy, I believe you have some stuff to share with us.
I do, and I was hoping that Natalia could, yes, thank you, put my report up on the board there. So we haven't talked about this in quite a while, the California Voting Rights Act sort of project that we have ongoing. We did have a proposal presented to us in March of this year. You remember March. And so it's not surprising that, you know, we've had a few other things going on since then. But there was a webinar in the CSDA library that I attended just in order to sort of catch us all up and remind us kind of what that's all about in the first place, and also kind of have an update on what's maybe new since the last time we really looked at it. So the two facilitators of this meeting were Doug Johnson, who's the person who did make that proposal to us for the demographic work that we would need to have done. And then an attorney from a law firm that does a lot of this kind of work. So just as kind of reminder, sort of the basic idea of what this is about is that A lot of jurisdictions all over the state are either in the process of, or considering the process of, or being forced into the process of changing from an at-large election system like we have to district elections. And we decided, I can't remember the date exactly of when we actually made the formal decision, but we decided that we would voluntarily enter into this process, just because we discussed it a lot and decided it seemed like a more democratic way to do business anyway. So part of why we have not jumped on this and, you know, had the process rolling all this time is because it is a census year, and the way the largest part of the data that you would use to make the decisions about how to draw districts, of course, come from census data. So you might as well wait until you have the most recent current census data, which will happen next year. What this report consists of is just sort of highlights from this webinar that I went to. And so I'll just go through them really briefly, and then you will end up with your own copy of this report. I'm sorry that I didn't have it ready for you in time to have been in your packet. So the first thing they did talk about was the census schedule. And, you know, if you follow the news, there's been a lot of news about how the census has, you know, the process of collecting census data, of course, has been vastly affected by COVID, and there have been all kinds of debate about whether or not to extend the time that census data can be collected and so on. But this webinar was presented in early September, and I at least at that point, they were fairly certain that these dates that I've listed here are probably how it's going to turn out, which is that the states are required to have access to the overall state totals strictly for the purpose of apportioning congressional districts. That deadline is the end of the year on December 31st. And then at the end of March, they release the local data. So end of March is when we would start to hear information about, you know, our own local area and what the census data would show. That, however, is not final until they do the prisoner adjustment a few weeks later. And what that means is that they go through the data and assign the data for, you know, prisoners in the California prison system, and I'm sure it must be the federal and county prison system and jail systems as well. Their data does not count at their current residence, which is where they're incarcerated, but it counts according to their last known address. So those adjustments get made, and so the earliest that finalized census data would be available would be somewhere in the middle of April. It's really important to, you know, kind of be a little bit ahead of the curve on entering this process, just because, and I didn't really quite get this until I attended this webinar, that it's not only districts like ours that are considering becoming district election jurisdictions instead of at large, but because it is a post-census year next year, something like 500 jurisdictions who already have district elections have to do a redistricting process because of the new census data. So cities and counties and school districts and special districts who already have district elections have to go through a process to see if the new census data will mean that they have to adjust their maps. So what that means is that the demand on demographers who do that kind of work is going to be extremely high. So it's good that we have already kind of opened that process with Doug Johnson. It probably would not be too soon to check back with him and lay out a timeline of, how we want to proceed, probably right after the first of the year, I would say is the latest we should probably think about that. We've talked a little bit about the case in Santa Monica, which the Santa Monica, and Katie, if you'll spot me on this, because I think your understanding of what's going on in this PICO case is deeper than mine. But Santa Monica has been fighting this, this pressure to change from at-large to district elections. There is a group of citizens who has sued Santa Monica in order to try to force them to create districts because they feel that a portion of their Latino residents or citizens or voters are not correctly represented because there is not a district in which they could have a stronger voting power to be able to elect a representative of their choice. So there was a significant, I think we've already talked about this, appeals court ruling, which was a blow to those plaintiffs because the analysis was that to change to district elections would only increase this proposed district from 14% to 30% Latino voters in this district, and the court ruled that that was not numerically significant. So they are appealing this to the Supreme Court. They may also take it to the legislature. So, if we were of a mind to say we didn't want to do this and we're resistant to it, there would be a whole analysis that we might be able to do ahead of time that would, in our case, I would think most likely show that there's probably not a set of maps that could be drawn in Altadena that would show a quote unquote protected class would have an identifiable district that would give that district at least 50% of, sorry, it's a little hard to explain correctly and be coherent, at least 50% of voters in that district to be of a protected class. So for example, if there was a Latino neighborhood in Altadena that a map line could be drawn around where 50% of the voters, not just the population, but 50% of the voters in that district would be of that class, then we would have no choice, but it really doesn't apply to us because we're going to do it anyway. So, so a lot of what it seemed like honestly, the vibe in this webinar was, do we have to do this? That seemed to be the mindset of some of the people who were attending. And I think that's why a lot of it honestly didn't apply that much to us because we've already decided that we're going to do it. That said, and thank you, Natalia, for scrolling down to the demand letters section. The attorneys, so there are a number of law firms in the state who are kind of targeting special districts in particular, and even in the COVID pandemic, they're continuing to send out these letters. Governor Newsom has basically suspended the clocks that apply pressure to special districts. That would mean, if you were resisting to this idea that you have a very limited amount of time to respond, just because this whole process requires public hearing. And it's of course, very hard to effectively have public hearings in a pandemic situation. So the executive order that has basically taken the heat off about all that is in place and will stay in place. And the day that executive order is lifted, all of those clocks will start running again. But because we have already been proactive and have made a formal, voted on a formal statement that it is our intention to go through this process, we're not bound by those timelines anyway. And one interesting comment I thought from the webinar was because we just decided it's a good idea, and that takes the pressure off of having to do it in a big hurry. When we do get to the point of actually, starting the hearings and, the actual formal process that we're going to do, we have more breathing room and we have more time. We're not on such a tight schedule to have all of those things happen, so that we will be in a position to perhaps invite more robust public comment and really have a process that is better in the end. So just to remind us, because I didn't quite remember the details of it, as far as what the process is once the decision is made to go ahead with it. You have 2 public hearings to gather public comment and input about how to create the maps. Then the demographers go off and draw them based on that public comment and all the other factors I'll talk about in a minute. After that, you have 2 more hearings to discuss the maps, to have residents give their feedback about whether or not they think they're correct. Then the board votes, and then the county registrar, goes through the process of changing our system so that the next time there's an election, these districts are taken into account. So the mapping criteria, the requirements about the mapping criteria are that each district has to have roughly, and I don't know what the definition of roughly is, it doesn't mean exact to the person, but they have to be balanced in terms of fairly equal population. They have to adhere to the provisions of the Federal Voting Rights Act, and there can be no racial gerrymandering. In other words, you can't draw weird lines in order to either exclude or unnaturally include protected classes into any particular one district. And then beyond that, some of this we had talked about in our initial discussions about it, in terms of creating maps that make sense. You have to take into account what they call communities of interest. The districts should be compact and contiguous. In other words, not checkerboard disconnected pieces that join together to become one district. There should be some acknowledgement of boundaries, just so that people have a sort of natural common sense idea of what the boundaries are. If they're door knocking for a particular candidate in a particular district, it shouldn't be such crazy boundary lines that it's hard for people to actually understand what the boundaries are. The item that's called respect voters' choices has to do with if when you start this process, theoretically it could be the case that all 5 members of your board could live in one part of town. And those are the people that voters voted for. So I saw some examples of maps in which they tried to take that into account by drawing map boundaries that, as much as possible, tried to preserve that board, since they were an elected board, but allowed the map to land the different trustees into different districts. I think that would be extraordinarily hard to do, but that's a goal, as much as it can be honored. And then lastly, to whatever degree we or the demographers would have any idea about whether there would be growth over the next 10 years in our community, to sort of account for that, so that the maps would not have to be drastically redrawn 10 years from now after the next census, when we would have to go through a redistricting process, just like everybody else does. So that's it in a nutshell. I added the contact information of these 2 facilitators. Doug Johnson, we already have a relationship with. I presume we wouldn't necessarily go out to a different attorney than our own attorneys. We are going to need some legal advice when it comes time to do this process. But that's the gist of what I learned. And I guess my takeaway is probably should get on this pretty soon after the first of the year. Thank you. I don't know if I could answer any questions anybody has, but if you have any.
Well, that was good. That was going to be my next question. Does anybody have any questions for Betsy or anything that they'd like to bring up in response to that? I really appreciate you kind of catching all of us up on this, Betsy. I think it's great. I am increasingly glad that we've already basically signed a commitment letter with Doug to have him on board, because I think there is going to be really high demand for his services.
For sure.
And so I'm pleased about that. And I know when we had talked to him previously, he had outlined pretty much a similar timeline. So, you know, basically starting as soon as data becomes available rather than waiting, because he said there are kind of two peaks. It's like right after data's out, and then like a couple months later when everybody kind of gets around to it. In sort of June and July, it tends to be really busy. So he said he thought that our process should be relatively painless, especially as compared to some of these bigger, you know.
Yeah, there was one scenario that they talked about that I never would have crossed my mind in a million years, and I don't think it applies to us, but I'll just tell you for another reason to be glad that things will be easier for us. And that is that some people are going through the districting process now on purpose before the census data is ready. And then after the census data is ready, they also will have to go through the redistricting process, except that the redistricting process is much easier.
Right.
I'm not quite sure how in the end it's ultimately easier to do the whole thing twice. I don't really get that rationale, but in any case, I think the best news is we're on track. I think we did our homework when we needed to. I don't think it's a problem at all that we've been doing other kind of more time sensitive things lately. But I think it was probably time to just sort of remind ourselves that that's a big project coming up next year.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And I'm, you know, we talked about this at the time, but I think consistently having the goal that all of our sort of steps in this process are designed to result in the most fair, equitable, you know, representative process possible that allows for the most public input, I think is great. And I'm, you know, I'm very encouraged by that.
I guess lastly, the only concern I have about the downside of switching to district elections as opposed to at-large elections is, as we learned this time, it's always hard to get people to run.
Yeah.
And you know, that last election, the 2018 election, that actually was competitive and, you know, exciting and real, you know, had to do with the circumstances that we found ourselves in at the time. And I don't think that's going to be the new normal anytime soon. On the other hand, I guess what this might shake up into the process that we don't have now is more local interest within each district, because it'll be cheaper and easier to run in a district than it is to run at large, that maybe people who aren't running because, you know, they aren't aware of it, or it's too complicated, or, you know, maybe the degree to which the process becomes more accessible will bring out people that wouldn't have done it otherwise. So I hope that's the case. In any case, I think, you know, it will always be on the board and the library staff to recruit people to think about running, because it's hard to get enough people to do it. So,
Terry, did you have a comment? I thought I saw you say something.
I was agreeing with Betsy. It'll be hard to recruit people, and, you know, town council has the same issues, trying to get people to stay or get somebody new. And so I think for us as a board to be constantly thinking about ways that we can reach out, even in the off season, would be a really good thing to do. And, you know, the thing I saw as you know, as a bright light out of all this would be that you maybe get young people involved in their districts and make them a kind of a little launching pad for getting them involved in politics. But Betsy's right, that one election that we had, where there were actually votes cast and there were candidates and campaigning and all that. That's not the norm, I think, for this position. So we'll have to always think about ways that we can make that happen again.
Yeah, no, I think that's like, I think 2018 was exceedingly competitive, which resulted in a better process all around, for sure, for sure. I think you're right that like lowering the barrier in terms of cost, in terms of accessibility, in terms of square footage, all those things are positives. And I will say, I was thinking about the same comparison, Terry, about town council, and I was very encouraged to see the robust, you know, showing of candidates for town council. Almost all of their races are contested, which is great, you know, and they have to fill 16 spots instead of 5. So I'm hoping that we can also continue to build that partnership, because with district-based, you know, systems, we will have a natural correlation with some of our census tracts that will make a lot of sense to, you know, build sort of one level down, not just town council and library, but between, say, C4 and census tracts, you know, A, B, and C. So I think there are a lot of potential ways that we can continue to build interest, but I agree, it has to be sustained, it has to be consistent, and it has to be really deliberate. Otherwise, we're gonna have a lot of crickets.
Well, another thing I would say in the positive column is we have a track record now of functionality, which, you know, who wants to hitch their wagon to Crazy Town? Nobody. So, you know,
well, we all did apparently, but
well, yeah, I don't know. Maybe we were crazy, but I think the result has been, you know, people want to join a team that they can see being productive and that they can see being exciting and that they can see being inspiring. And I think, you know, fingers crossed, that will only increase. So
here. So get those applications in for that vacancy. Make sure to apply. We want to see them. And hopefully we get a good showing for that. Thank you so much, Betsy.
Sure.
I'm sorry that you have such a heavy schedule of reports tonight, but the next one is yours as well.
That's okay. Got to squeeze of work out of me.
There you go.
Yeah, the next thing is in your packet on page 36. This shouldn't be a surprise. We've talked about it coming up. We're so delighted that our wonderful director, Nikki, is coming up on her 1-year anniversary in November. And we've, you know, pretty much done what we said we were going to do in terms of her evaluation process through her first year. On page 36 there, I won't read it, but you can see the section of our bylaws that has been our guidance about that. So what I did was to just kind of take the timeline from the last 2 that we've done and sort of lay it as a template over the dates that we have coming up. And so what I wanted to do is present to you this proposed schedule for how to just accomplish her evaluation. So I'll just go through that briefly. You've been here as we've developed and edited and finalized the form that we're going to use, the actual format of her written evaluation. So Nikki's all ready to complete the first step, which is her commentary on that form, and she'll get that back to me. So then I will create a packet for each one of you and send it to you that has her commentary filled in and then space for you to put in your commentary. And then you'll have a week to add whatever you want to say. And you will send it, and you don't have to remember this now because I'll send it to you with directions at the time, but it all goes So just as a reminder, we can't see each other's comments before the meeting. We can't collaborate about this, separately before the meeting. The next time and the only time we will be together to discuss it is in a closed session meeting on our November meeting date. So my challenge is to just get it all out to you and have you get it all out to Roger Crawford at BB&K. And then what will happen is, we will look at it all together for the very first time at that closed session. And so just like we did before, we'll have that discussion. Then I will edit on the fly and try to create a coherent, unified document during that meeting. Roger did point out that Thursday, November 26th is Thanksgiving. So I don't think I'll be doing my editing that day. So I'm moving my date back one day. So instead of cooking turkey on Wednesday for the giant family that won't be here because nobody's having a giant Thanksgiving this year, I will get it back to him, and then he will send 2 confidential copies to the library. One is for Nikki's own, her own copy, and then one goes into her personnel file. And then I guess the same as was the case the last time, and then some future date when we're all able to physically sign these things, we'll sign them, and so that they'll be officially signed later. And then, as far as this committee is concerned, it was formed as an ad hoc committee for the purpose of Nikki's first year of evaluation. And as of that meeting, we will have completed that charge. So I think that committee gets dissolved at that point. And then next year around now, so now we're on an annual evaluation schedule. So the next time Nikki would be evaluated would be next November. And I would just recommend that some trustee in, I don't know, maybe September be named or appointed to just kind of do the stuff I'm doing, so that you have somebody who's just shepherding the process through.
Yeah.
So that's that.
That's great. I think that makes a lot of sense. Any feedback from anybody about the schedule? I mean, I think that all looks good to me. I will say, everybody just sort of prepare yourselves. We have a lot going on in November. So we've got, apart from the universe, but we've got that feedback that's due November 13th. We'll have our special meeting to handle the vacancy appointment on Thursday, November 19th. And then we'll have our regular November meeting on Monday, the 23rd, which will start with a closed session. And then we'll also have a regular agenda following that. So just, a fair amount of meeting time. So just kind of build that into your plan now.
Maybe just a question. This is Nikki.
Yeah.
Will we start closed session early, or will we start it at 5?
I mean, I have no objection to starting closed session early, so we're not here till 10 o'clock at night, but I defer completely to you guys because I know everybody has different schedules. In the past, we've started at 4 to give us some game time ahead.
I can do that.
I'm fine with the early if that works for everybody else's schedule.
Camille, is that a no for you?
I can make it work, but it's hard to start at 4 for me.
Yeah. No problem. So then let's stick with our 5 o'clock start time. Mm-hmm. Yep, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. So we'll start at 5. We'll do closed session. I'm trying to remember how long it's taken us in the past, but usually an hour at least. And then we'll start our open session afterwards.
I maybe
probably
can
6 o'clock.
swing I don't know if it'll make a difference, 4:30, but I have to be able to get home and get settled with the small one. So
Totally. Yeah. Let's just leave it at 5. It's our standard thing. That way there's no chance that I forget that it's early. So we'll just leave it at 5. All good. And we've got, other stuff on the agenda, but we'll make it happen. Yeah. Yep. Good. Okay. I think this is great. And Betsy, you're going to be reminding us all the way along
yeah.
about what we need to do.
Oh, I'm gonna nag you to death. Don't worry.
Yay. Fantastic. Very good. Thank you. Anything else for Betsy or any other comments on this process before we move on? Okay. All right, Public Funding Committee, no formal report here. All I will say is that obviously the Public Funding Committee was formed originally in anticipation of the whole process around the CFD formation and Measure Z. We will, in 8 days, know the results of that vote. And so I think, you know, in next month's agenda, perhaps we should think about if Measure Z is successful, the formation of perhaps either a standing oversight committee or some sort of committee tasked with dealing with that ongoing process. I will be very upfront and say I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I do know that there are probably norms and procedures that we should think about following. I've asked Nikki and Natalia to look into that a little bit, including some sort of best practices going forward. We've also thought a little bit about how that could work in terms of our board retreat. So I think that one way or another, the Public Funding Committee will probably need to change forms starting next month, but that is a bridge we can cross when we come to it, because it's an ad hoc committee kind of created for this one specific purpose. Okay. I am going to have an open call here. Liaison reports, trustee reports. Anybody have anything that they would like to share on any of those fronts? Betsy?
I have two things to share at this point. One is that I was asked to let you guys know by a gentleman named Richard Robeson, who I might have mentioned him before. I met him on the hiking trails because we have dogs in common who play as we hike back here. And he used to work at the library. He was a library employee for 30 years, I think. He was a finance director back in the 80s and 90s. Anyway, we talk library every time we see each other. And the last time I saw him, he asked me to tell you that a former library director named Bill Tama, who was the library director for I think about 20 years in the 80s and 90s, whom I spoke with as I was doing my research about the building of our library, who's quite elderly and he's quite ill. And he wanted you to know that he is moving to Michigan to live with his son because he has prostate cancer. But he sends you his greetings, and just for the record, wanted the library board to be informed that that's his current situation. I did go ahead and tell this to Nikki as soon as I found out, because there are people on our staff who worked under him. Victoria and Sue. I hadn't really thought about Sue. Maybe she did too, and somebody else I had. Oh, Michelle from the branch, I think, knew him. So anyway, one of our own from our history sends greetings from the past. So I wanted you to know that. And secondly, I wrote an op-ed piece that appears in the Star News online today. So take a look.
Thank you so much, Betsy. Any other reports from anybody? Okay. That brings us into our new business. So item 7A, naming and recognition policy, which appears beginning on page 38 of your package. Nikki, do you want to brief us on this a little bit?
Sure thing.
Thank you.
All right. Here. So as I mentioned in the report, the naming and donor recognition policy was last updated exactly 5 years ago on October 26, 2015. I've been in conversation with Katie as well as the support organizations, especially in light of the fact that we're going to have significant building projects as well as other opportunities for naming or recognition. And we wanted to look at it and make sure that the policy was updated. So basically we took the old policy and some of the substantial changes that we made were to add a glossary of definitions, as well as rather than naming donor levels, we just called them levels 1 through 5. And I think we combined one of the two. So like it was 1 to 2,000 and then 2 to 5 or something. So we just made it a little bit cleaner. Expounded some of the explanation requirements of naming recognition for assets, as well as an inclusion of a process and timeline that wasn't previously in it. It has been reviewed by BB&K for legal compliance and updated with any changes they suggested. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Natalia's on the line too. She's the one that did a lot of research with other naming and recognition policies to incorporate into this one. I just think it's made it a lot more robust, basically.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd say it's much tighter and much more sophisticated than our previous policy was. So that's, I think, really encouraging.
Oh.
I just think the timing is perfect, so I'm glad to see this update for sure.
So we're just recommending that you review and approve it if everyone's okay with the way it looks.
Yeah, if there are no questions or amendments, we can move right into a vote to approve, but I do want to make sure everybody has time to register any feedback. Betsy, go ahead, please.
I just have one question. It's never occurred to me to wonder, except for the community room, do we have anything now that's named?
Besides the branch being named after Bob Lucas, there's not anything else that stands out to me. We have had some people recently reach out about potentially naming like a bench or a tree or something, but again, we didn't know how we've approached this in the past, so that goes back to this policy. So I do think through these building projects that we'll hopefully be embarking on soon, there's going to be potential for that to happen, but I'm not aware of any others, unless I don't think Jonathan's still on the call. Oh, Natalia, you want to speak?
Just to kind of echo that, there are a few benches in the parking lot, near the parking lot area at the main branch that have nameplates on it, but there's not any information, at least in our files that I saw, where this was like approved or what that kind of where that came from. So at least we hopefully will have a process now.
Well, I'm just going to echo what Jason just said, that the timing couldn't be better, because I think it starts to have its own momentum if people get excited about the building stuff and they know that, that they helped make it happen, that people just the buy-in of people wanting to feel like they, kind of own a little piece of the library is going to be, I think it's going to generate a lot of momentum, which is awesome. So well done.
Great. Okay, well, I will then go ahead and ask for a motion to approve the naming and recognition policy as it appears in your packet. Don't let Betsy do it every time, you guys.
So moved.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, perfect. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion on this? Okay, we'll proceed to a roll call vote. Trustee Andrews.
Aye.
Trustee Capel.
Approved. Aye.
Trustee Khan.
Aye.
Trustee Wilkerson.
Aye.
And an aye vote for me as well. So that's unanimously adopted. Thank you. And thank you, Nikki and Natalia, for doing all of that research as well to clean up what we had. I think this is much, much better. Kind of along the same lines, you will see following, starting on page 45 of your package, an amendment to our Board of Trustees policy. One of the things, and I'll let Nikki talk a little bit more about this, but that we experienced this month was a number of requests for support / endorsement / basically co-signing ideas. And all of those are included in your packet as correspondence, but we realized that we had no actual policy or kind of consistent way of evaluating those requests, which struck both of us as very unfair and inconsistent. And so this is our sort of first iteration of an attempt to do that. Nikki, do you want to add anything to that?
No, in your packet, under correspondence, you'll see we included both the ask to the board as well as the emails that I received kind of with these groups reaching out to us. I mean, I think it's commendable that our endorsement is something that people want to add to grants they're applying for or other activities or projects that they think will be important to have the board support behind it. So again, we couldn't find any history of these types of endorsements or supporting things from the past. So Natalia did do some research and put together this amendment to our procedures. Do you want to talk about that at all, Natalia?
More so about the placement of it. There is a section within, which I mentioned in the staff report, but there's a section that is about presenting matters to the Board of Trustees. And I'd hope that this would be the place where you would amend the policies and procedures you have in place now. The last item on there is 12.8. So this would come in as 12.9. And it's thorough in the process of when we get a request down to what would happen. And I think the thing to highlight would be, I'm sure you all have read over this, but the discretion of the chair and the Library Board of Trustees to either give that decision to support, delegate it to Nikki, our library director, or for you all to put it into a formal vote. So I'd hope that you guys consider this and amend your current policies and procedures and hopefully approve this and move forward. That's all. And I'll take any questions as well.
Betsy, go ahead.
So I'm noticing that in the example of the Amigos de los Rios, that their email is dated October 12th and their grant deadline is October 15th. And I think that's probably going to be kind of normal. I think that's kind of normal in the grant writing process, that this piece of it is something that people don't necessarily think ahead enough on. So I'm sorry if I'm not remembering whether there's a, I guess I'm just highlighting the fifth bullet point on page 45, that between the chair and the director, you may be able to delegate it so that somebody doesn't miss their grant application if we don't happen to have a meeting coming up on the calendar. Because I feel like that's probably going to be the case more often than not. So, I mean, I think it's good that the default process be that it's a board decision, and this looks like a great process having it in correspondence and stuff. But I'm glad to see that there's a little workaround, because otherwise I think people will miss a lot of deadlines.
Yeah, I think that's basically right, Nikki. And I think that, or Nikki, I'm sorry, I was looking at Nikki's name, Betsy, sorry. I think that's basically right. I mean, I guess the big question that I had for you all is if you're comfortable with that, or if you would prefer that every sort of, indication of support basically coming from the district was the result of a formal vote of the board. And, obviously that does include some time constraints. Like it just by necessity has to move a lot more slowly because of that. I think that there's probably an argument to be made both ways. So I wanted to get a feel for what you guys all felt about that. Camila, go ahead.
Is it allowed to have, for example, if you were going to approve it, between you and the director, that people could weigh in, like if there's an objection to that via email, or it has to be a meeting where it is discussed? I don't know what's allowed.
It's a good question, and it's kind of where we run up against the Brown Act. So in order to have any discussion, we would have to have a meeting. Now, that doesn't mean we couldn't call a special meeting, right? We absolutely could do that, but I think, you know, everybody's time is limited anyway, and it is our sort of general preference to try to keep our business to regular meetings as much as possible. So yeah, if we wanted to have any kind of discussion, it would have to occur within the context of either a special meeting or a regular meeting.
Can I add something, Katie?
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that we need to differentiate is not like partnering or sponsoring or help facilitate. It's when like the district is taking a position on something or endorsing, you know, like I was looking through the package. The first request I got from LA County about working with them on the Altadena Community Active Transportation Plan, it was like, could we work with you to do a meeting and a this and a that? And we were like, of course. But then they came back with, we need you to fill out this letter in support of it. And that's where it's like, we felt like there's a difference between us partnering and working with groups and taking formal positions on things. Because, you know, I think most of the time, I think that's something the board would discuss and vote on, in my opinion. So unless it's like really time sensitive, like Betsy said, but if that's the case, like we could be a partner, not a formal endorser. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times with grants, they're just asking who your partners are to facilitate the grant and to carry out the work. Whereas like the one grant letter, and I'm confused because there's 4, I think, in here. The grant needed us to fill out a formal statement on behalf of the organization, or that might have been the Waldorf school one. I don't know. Like I said, I got like 4 of these in a week, it felt like. So again, this would be for the district to take a formal position, not for us to just work with them. So I think that is another differentiation.
That's right. I think the other, I mean, and I think, Natalia, your placement of this in section 12 is totally appropriate in the board policies, because there is also in section 12, it specifies how members of the public can request an item be added to an agenda. So if somebody had something that, for example, was more time sensitive and they wanted it considered more rapidly, they could make a request, a formal written request, that we add it to an upcoming agenda rather than like include it as correspondence and then discuss and determine if we wanted to add it as an agenda item for new business. So that's an option as well. That's, I think, 12.4. So I think in terms of like where it appears in the policies, it makes a lot of sense. You know, and it isn't something we've really had cause to have a lot of conversation about before. Camila, please.
Yeah. So question then.
Yeah.
Regarding what Nikki's saying. So there's 2 of them in here where they want you to, or us to, sign a letter basically of support. So are you saying that if there was that situation that we would need to all meet, or are you suggesting that we will all need to meet and discuss it, whether or not we would be doing that, taking a formal position, versus if it's something where we're throwing support behind it, it would not require a meeting for us all to discuss and approve?
Yeah, I mean, I think the difference is between basically operational support versus formal endorsement. So, I mean, operationally, we support a lot of things all the time, all over town, with lots of different organizations, right? From town council to Wacona to the Jackson PTA to whatever. And that's sort of the operational sphere of the director and the staff to make those relationships and maintain them and build them. But I think when, like, you know, there are requests for formal indications of support saying basically the library district agrees with this or co-signs it or, you know, endorses it, that's where it would meet that higher threshold.
And I would be fine with that personally if it is a situation where if, there's the formal support required, that there's, it has to have a meeting. And so, to Betsy's point, they may have to plan ahead to ensure that they are able to get, on the agenda, for that meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess the real question is this, in 1, 2, 3, 4. So the fifth bullet point kind of envisions a potential solution to that problem, which is to, empower whoever the chair is to delegate that decision to the director, or to set it as new business at the very next meeting. I think we should probably amend this to say, or to call a special meeting to consider the request. Or we could just have that not be an option at all and require that every single request for formal support go through that process.
I would suggest the latter.
Okay. So are you saying, Camille, I want to make sure I'm understanding, you're saying that you would advocate basically striking that fifth bullet point?
No, I would say that I wouldn't put it in there that a special meeting would need to be called, that they would have to get it in by the deadline, basically, so that,
okay,
so that it falls to an already existing meeting. Because I don't know, just in the past month, I guess you got all of these, which are like 4 of them. So I imagine that could happen moving forward. It might be challenging trying to schedule a bunch of special meetings to address,
Oh, listen, I totally agree with that. Yeah, I just want to provide all the options. Any other thoughts or feedback? I mean, the action is to request a motion that we approve the policy as it appears, but I want to make sure we have time to make any other tweaks or amendments or adjustments that anybody might like, or, throw it away completely. Who knows?
I have a couple of comments, but please forgive me if you've gone over this, because I'm having some real glitches with my internet here, so we're going.
Yeah.
But that fifth bullet, I think, is sort of the thing that you want to set up any kind of a judgment situation. And I'm using that Waldorf School one as an example. They want to get us as a library to sort of to endorse them, but this has to do with the health of kids, right? And things like that. So I think have some kind of a mechanism like is enclosed in bullet 5 that allows some judgment to be made on this, so that it becomes a board item at the next meeting. If I'm reading this right, I would favor something like that. And I'm like Camila, I don't think I would favor having a special meeting for to consider these sorts of things as they come up. I think that people need to get their stuff in on time, and then we look at it in our regular cycle. So I apologize if we went over this already.
No. I think I introduced unnecessary confusion by talking about special meetings. I was just saying that, like, if we adopt this policy, the only other way in which we would be able to consider any requests would be if we convene. Like, that's not envisioned by this policy, right? This policy basically says you got to get it in, you got to send a letter, we got to request whatever materials so we can consider it and then vote on it. But just in the context of the Brown Act, right, that the only other scenario in which that discussion could potentially happen would be a special meeting. But I that's not included in this policy. And so I apologize if I introduced like unnecessary confusion on that front.
No problem. I only heard part of it, so that's why I was wondering.
Okay.
At the risk of more confusion, which I don't think I'll do, but just in case.
Okay.
I don't think, Katie, I don't think you were suggesting that we insert language that says we're required to have a special meeting. I think what you were saying, I thought what you were saying was to have that in there as an option if needed, in case there was some sort of extenuating circumstance. But isn't it the case that the board president has the discretion to call special meetings? So it's not like you have to put that in there just to keep that option open. You have that option already.
Correct.
So So yeah, I'd say let it be. And whenever you're ready to make a motion to adopt this policy, I'll make it.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Then I would just request, just because in reading this one more time, I do see a little conflict there because it says in bullet point 5, set the request as new business at the subsequent monthly meeting. I would say at a subsequent meeting for a formal vote. Otherwise, it requires that it be at the next regular meeting, which I think is unnecessarily burdensome.
That's a good point.
I've read this several times and just now noticed it. So, any objections to that? Okay. Then I think we're probably ready. So I'm going to ask for a motion to go ahead and approve this policy as amended with that one small adjustment.
I so move.
Okay, motion's been made. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to a roll call vote. So Trustee Andrews,
Aye.
Trustee Capel,
Aye.
Trustee Khan,
Aye.
Trustee Wilkerson,
Aye.
and that's an aye vote from me. So when we put this in the board policy, Natalia, can you just make that adjustment?
Of course.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, sort of speaking of special things, that brings us to our added item, which is item 7C, which came up really in sort of discussion today. So because we were looking at a high wind situation today with the Santa Anas and potential public service or public safety, you know, the thing where Edison shuts your power down so it doesn't catch everything on fire. We realized that there were several other situations ongoing that might make it necessary to go ahead and close our facilities, which have now reopened in a limited fashion. So my request is that we vote as a board to authorize Nikki at her discretion, so as the director, to close our public facilities if there is an emergency, public health risk, or another situation like the water main that they're working on Mariposa getting shut off that requires such a situation. That is something that is envisioned under Government Code section 54956.5, which does apply to us. So that's sort of the deal. Any further, that was a really, beautifully phrased summary. Nikki, do you have anything to add on that front?
No, I don't think so. No.
Okay.
Anyone has any questions?
Yeah, we had it. So we had a vote somewhat similar to this back when we were thinking about closing and reopening and all the COVID decision making earlier this year. But this would basically be a motion to authorize Nikki to, at her discretion, close our facilities without a formal subsequent vote of the board, if that should be necessitated by either emergency conditions or public health risk.
So I'm sorry, would this action apply to just the imminent possibilities that are happening right now, or is this like a policy?
I think it would make sense to put this in place through the end of the year, through the end of the calendar year, just in case there's a situation that requires us to move quickly. We can always convene an emergency meeting. And I think if, conditions allow, that's fine. But if, for example, power goes out or the water main on Mariposa gets turned off, I would hate for us to have to wait to call an emergency meeting so that Nikki can say, yeah, we can close the building. And this is something that's sort of outlined under her authority in the board policies anyway, but I think that there's a lot of value in just having an explicit vote to ensure that she could take that action.
Well, and just to expand too on the water that Katie mentioned, they've been doing a project along Mariposa. I'm sure people have seen it on the main water line for the last several weeks. And at some point, they're going to shut the water down. We're not sure exactly when, So that's another reason we're bringing this forward, so that we don't have to call a meeting for you guys to give me the power to do that on that day, because we'll have to send staff home because there will be no water for at least a half day, possible full day or more. You never know, but hopefully not very long.
And I think the other piece of this is just that the potential, implications, the public health implications of loss of utilities, whether it's electricity or water or whatever it is, the risks are just higher given the situation that we're in. So I want to make sure that we can move quickly if we need to make sure everybody's safe. So the motion on this would be an authorization for the director at her discretion in the situation of a public health or emergency situation to go ahead and close library facilities, which would be in effect through the end of the calendar year.
So moved, or I motion
Okay.
that.
Perfect. So moved. Great. Do I hear a second? Perfect. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion on this? All right, hearing none, we'll proceed to a roll call vote. Trustee Andrews.
Aye.
Trustee Capel.
Aye.
Trustee Khan.
Aye.
Trustee Wilkerson.
Aye.
And that's an aye vote from me. Thanks, guys. That's great. Okay, that brings us to our correspondence. You'll have seen our LAFCO election results. So thank you again, Betsy, for representing us.
But our guy lost.
Our guy lost. Yes, he did, sadly. But, we voted. It's good. And you'll see, of course, as we talked about already, all of the various requests for support that have come in. So at this point, I will open up the floor for any proposed future agenda items that anybody would like to move for inclusion on a future agenda. Okay, well, if anything comes up, as always, you can let us know. I think that all of the requests for support, unfortunately, were somewhat time limited, so their moment has sort of passed, but in future, at least we now have a policy that would allow us to advise people on how that works. Okay, then if there is nothing else, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Seconded.
Perfect. All right, motion's been made and seconded. Any objection? Hearing none, I will declare us adjourned at 7:18 p.m. All right, guys, thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Everybody, stay safe.